German Shepherd was crying from a broken sewer pipe. What happened next? Left. Everyone in tears. The crying wouldn't stop. What Sarah Mitchell discovered the foggy Thursday morning would change 3 lives forever, and the truth behind those desperate cries will absolutely break your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Sarah's sneakers splashed through shallow puddles as she walked Tommy to kindergarten, the same route they'd taken every morning for the past year. The fog hung thick over Maplewood's quiet streets, muffling sounds and making everything feel distant, dreamlike. Tommy's small hand gripped hers tighter than usual. "Mommy, do you hear that?" Tommy stopped so suddenly that Sarah nearly stumbled. "Hear what, sweetheart?" She glanced at her watch, 7:42. They had 18 minutes to reach the school, and her shift at the hospital started at 9. No time for delays. Tommy's eyes, wide and serious beneath his yellow raincoat hood, searched the empty street. "Someone's crying." Sarah listened, hearing only the distant hum of morning traffic and water dripping from tree branches. "It's just the wind, baby. Come on, we need to—" "No!" Tommy pulled his hand free, something he never did. "Listen, Mommy. Please." That's when she heard it. Faint at first, like wind through pipes, but as she focused, the sound sharpened into something unmistakable, a low, mournful cry that made her chest tighten. It was coming from the storm drain near the corner of Maple and 3rd. "It's probably just—" Sarah started, but Tommy was already running toward the sound, his dinosaur backpack bouncing with each step. "Tommy, wait!" He dropped to his knees beside the storm drain, pressing his small face against the metal grate. The crying grew louder, more desperate. Sarah's heart began to race as she knelt beside her son, her scrubs getting wet on the damp concrete. Through the grate, she could see the pipe had partially collapsed about 6 feet in, creating a narrow tunnel of broken concrete and twisted metal. And there, deep in the shadows where the morning light couldn't reach, 2 amber eyes stared back at them. "It's a doggy," Tommy whispered, his voice breaking. "He's stuck, Mommy. He's scared." The eyes blinked, and another cry echoed from the pipe. Not just any cry, but the kind of sound that spoke of pain, fear, and fading hope. Sarah's nursing instincts kicked in, overriding her schedule concerns. "Okay, baby, step back. Let me look." She lowered herself flat against the wet pavement, peering into the darkness. The German Shepherd was wedged deep in the collapsed section, his large body twisted at an uncomfortable angle. Even from this distance, she could see the matted fur, the way his ribs showed through his coat, and something dark, blood, on his front leg. "Can you reach him?" Tommy asked, his small fingers clutching the back of her jacket. Sarah stretched her arm. Through the grate, her fingertips barely passing the first bend in the pipe. The dog was at least 4 feet beyond her reach. "He's too far, sweetheart. We have to help him." Tommy's voice rose to a pitch she'd only heard during his worst nightmares. "Mommy, please!" "Heroes don't walk away." Those words, the same ones she'd told him when he was scared of the dark, scared of starting school, scared of everything, now thrown back at her with such conviction that her eyes burned with sudden tears. Sarah pulled out her phone, dialing 911 with shaking fingers. The dispatcher's voice was professionally calm, maddeningly so. "Animal Control is handling another emergency. They estimate arrival in 3 to 4 hours." 3 to 4 hours? Sarah looked at the darkening sky. The weather app had predicted storms by noon. "This pipe will flood if it rains. The dog will drown." "I understand your concern, ma'am, but—" Sarah hung up. Tommy was on his stomach now, reaching his tiny arm through the grate, singing softly, the same lullaby she sang when thunderstorms kept him awake. The dog's crying quieted slightly, those amber eyes fixed on her son. "Tommy, honey, we need to—" "He knows we're here," Tommy interrupted, his voice steady with 5-year-old certainty. "He knows we won't leave him." But they had to leave. School, work, responsibilities. Sarah stood, ready to pull Tommy away, when she noticed something that made her pause. Around the dog's neck, barely visible in the shadows, was a leather collar. Not the cheap kind from pet stores, but thick, well-crafted leather with metal studs. This wasn't some stray. This dog belonged to someone. "Please, Mommy." Tommy stood up, his face streaked with tears she hadn't seen fall. What if it was me stuck down there? The question hit her like a physical blow. Sarah looked at her son, shy, sensitive Tommy, who still slept with a nightlight, who whispered to butterflies and apologized to flowers when he accidentally stepped on them. This was the first time she'd seen him fight for something, truly fight. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Okay, we'll figure something out." Within minutes, a small crowd had gathered. Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down brought a flashlight. Mike from across the street tried reaching in with a golf club. The teenage Martinez twins filmed everything on their phones. But no one could reach the dog, and with each passing minute, his cries grew weaker. "Someone should just call animal control and wait," someone muttered. "That dog's been down there all night by the looks of it," another voice added. "Probably won't last much longer anyway." Tommy's small body went rigid at those words. Sarah felt him trembling against her side, his breath coming in short gasps like it did before an anxiety attack. She was about to lead him away when a deep voice cut through the crowd's chatter. "Everyone step back. Give the dog some air." The crowd parted as a man approached, tall, broad-shouldered, with graying hair and the kind of purposeful walk that made people automatically move aside. Sarah had seen him a few times since he'd moved to the neighborhood 3 months ago. Daniel something. Brooks? He kept to himself, polite but distant. Daniel knelt by the drain with surprising grace for such a large man. The dog's crying stopped completely. Not quieted, stopped. As if a switch had been flipped. "That's interesting," Daniel murmured, lowering himself flat against the pavement with practiced ease. He studied the dog for a long moment, then made a soft clicking sound with his tongue. The dog's ears, barely visible in the shadows, perked forward. "You military?" Daniel asked quietly, not to anyone in particular, but to the dog itself. Sarah found herself holding her breath. Tommy stepped closer to the drain, and Daniel didn't stop him. "This isn't just any German shepherd," Daniel said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Look at his stance, even injured and trapped. See how his eyes track movement? The way he went silent when I approached? He sat back on his heels. This dog's been trained. Specialized training? Like a police dog?" Mike asked. "More than that." Daniel's expression was unreadable. "This is military-grade training. K9 Special Operations." The crowd murmured with renewed interest, phones coming out to record. But Daniel's attention had shifted to Tommy, who stood frozen, staring at the dog with an intensity that made Sarah's maternal instincts flare. "What's your name, son?" Daniel asked gently. "Tommy," came the whispered reply. "Tommy, I need you to do something for me. Can you keep singing to him, that song you were singing before?" Tommy nodded, dropping back to his knees. His voice was thin at first, trembling, but grew stronger as the familiar words came. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." The dog's tail, barely visible in the darkness, moved slightly. Not quite a wag, but acknowledgement. "I need to get some tools," Daniel said, standing with the fluid motion of someone who'd spent years staying ready for action. "I can get him out, but I need specific equipment." 20 minutes. "The storm," Sarah started. "I know." Daniel's eyes met hers, and she saw something there. Understanding, determination, and something else. Pain, maybe. Old pain. 20 minutes. Keep the boy singing. That dog's chosen him. Chosen him? Sarah's voice came out sharper than intended. What does that mean? But Daniel was already jogging away, moving faster than a man his age should be able to. The crowd began to disperse, interest waning without immediate action. Soon it was just Sarah, Tommy, Mrs. Chen with her flashlight, and the Martinez twins still filming. Tommy never stopped singing. He went through every song Sarah had ever taught him. Lullabies, nursery rhymes, even the alphabet song. The dog's eyes never left him, blinking slowly, breathing visible in the quick rise and fall of his chest. "Mommy," Tommy said between songs, "he's trying to be brave, but he's scared. Really scared." "How do you know that, baby?" Tommy tilted his head, considering. "I just know, the same way you know when I have bad dreams even before I cry." Sarah's throat tightened. It was true. She always woke moments before Tommy's nightmares turned bad, some maternal instinct pulling her from sleep. But this was different, wasn't it? The first drops of rain began to fall, fat and cold. Sarah pulled Tommy closer, trying to shield him with her body. The dog whimpered, the first sound he'd made since Daniel left. "It's okay," Tommy called into the pipe. "He's coming back. The strong man is coming back to help." Sarah checked her phone. Daniel had been gone for 15 minutes. Her supervisor had called twice, the school once. She ignored them all. Something was happening here. Something she didn't understand but couldn't walk away from. "There!" Tommy pointed as Daniel rounded the corner, carrying a large duffel bag and what looked like industrial equipment. He moved with the same purposeful stride, rain already soaking through his flannel shirt. He dropped to his knees beside them, unzipping the bag with practiced efficiency. Inside were tools Sarah didn't recognize. Specialized saws, thick rope, what looked like climbing gear, and a harness clearly meant for a large dog. "This is going to be dangerous," Daniel said, looking directly at Sarah. "The pipe's unstable. When I cut, it could shift, could collapse completely. Then don't. If I don't, he dies." Daniel's voice was flat, matter of fact. "The rain's going to get worse. That pipe will fill in less than an hour. He's weak. He won't be able to fight the current." Sarah looked at Tommy, whose eyes were wide but determined. "Do it," she said. Daniel nodded, then turned to Tommy. "I need you to keep him calm. Can you do that? No matter what happens, what you hear, you keep singing. Keep him focused on you." "I won't stop," Tommy promised, his small chin jutting out with determination Sarah had never seen before. Daniel pulled on thick gloves and grabbed the pipe saw. "When I give the signal, I need you both to move back. Fast, understood?" They nodded. Daniel positioned himself at the grate, studying the pipe's structure with an engineer's eye. Then he began to cut. The sound was horrible, metal screaming against metal, concrete dust billowing out in clouds. The dog started thrashing, panicking. "Sing louder!" Daniel shouted over the noise. Tommy's voice rose, high and clear. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Sarah found herself singing too, her voice joining her son's. The dog stopped thrashing, those amber eyes finding Tommy through the dust and chaos. Daniel worked with surgical precision, cutting through specific points in the grate. Sweat mixed with rain on his face, his jaw clenched with effort. The pipe groaned, shifted. A chunk of concrete fell, splashing into water that was already beginning to pool at the pipe's bottom. "Almost there," Daniel muttered, making a final cut. A section of grate fell away, creating an opening just large enough for him to squeeze through. "Now, the hard part." He grabbed the rope and harness. "I'm going in." "What?" Sarah grabbed his arm. "You can't. I can, and I will." He shook her off gently but firmly. "That dog won't come to anyone else. He's made his choice." Daniel looked at Tommy. "Keep singing, son. No matter what." Daniel squeezed through the opening, his broad shoulders barely fitting. Sarah watched in horror as he crawled into the pipe, disappearing into the darkness where the dog waited. The rain was coming harder now, water beginning to flow into the drain from the street. "Daniel!" Sarah called. No response, just the sound of movement, scraping, a low murmur of words she couldn't make out. Tommy kept singing, his voice starting to crack. Sarah pulled him against her, adding her voice to his. "You make me happy when skies are gray." A yelp from inside the pipe, then Daniel's voice strained. "Got him!" Pulling back now. The pipe groaned again, louder this time. Sarah saw Daniel's feet first, then his legs, backing out slowly. He was pulling something, the rope taut in his hands. "Come on, boy," Daniel grunted. "Work with me here." Another groan from the pipe. Concrete dust rained down. Then suddenly the dog's head appeared, massive, even with matted fur. Daniel had managed to get the harness on him. Together, man and dog squeezed through the opening, just as a terrible cracking sound echoed from deep in the pipe. "Move!" Daniel shouted. Sarah grabbed Tommy, pulling him back as Daniel hauled the dog clear. The pipe collapsed behind them with a thunderous crash, water and debris exploding outward. They stumbled backward, Daniel shielding the dog with his body, Sarah shielding Tommy. Then, silence except for the rain. The dog lay on the wet pavement, breathing hard. He was even larger than Sarah had thought. A magnificent animal despite his poor condition. His fur was indeed matted with mud and worse, ribs showing through his coat. The wound on his front leg was infected, angry red and swollen. But his eyes, those remarkable amber eyes, were clear and bright and fixed entirely on Tommy. Tommy pulled free from Sarah's grasp before she could stop him. He knelt beside the dog, his small hand reaching out slowly, carefully. The dog, this massive trained military animal, lowered his head and gently, so gently, licked Tommy's fingers. "Hi, Max," Tommy whispered. Sarah's breath caught. "Tommy, how do you know his name?" "He told me," Tommy said simply, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Daniel reached for the collar, turning the tag toward the light. His expression shifted, surprise flickering across his weathered features. "He's right. The tag says Max." He looked at Sarah, then at Tommy. "The rest is worn away, but how did you know?" Tommy didn't answer. He was busy stroking Max's head, whispering things only the dog could hear. Max's tail, despite everything, began to wag weakly. "We need to get him help," Daniel said, his voice rough. "He's in bad shape. Dehydrated, infected wound, possibly internal injuries from being trapped." "My apartment's closest," Sarah heard herself say. "We can take him there, call a vet." "Mom, he needs us," Tommy said, looking up at her with eyes that seemed suddenly older, wiser. "He chose us." There it was again, that word, chose. Sarah wanted to argue, to point out that they couldn't just take in a strange dog, especially one that clearly belonged to someone, possibly the military. But looking at Tommy's face, seeing an expression of certainty she'd never witnessed before, the words died in her throat. "Can you carry him?" she asked Daniel. He nodded, already positioning himself. "He's lighter than he should be. Been on his own for a while." With surprising gentleness, Daniel lifted Max, the dog barely protesting beyond a small whimper. "Lead the way." As they walked through the rain towards Sarah's apartment building, Tommy staying close to Daniel's side where he could keep one hand on Max, Sarah noticed something odd. Despite his injuries, despite the trauma of being trapped, Max kept his head up, alert. His eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, tracking every movement, every person they passed. And always, his gaze returned to Tommy. "He's protecting him," Daniel said quietly, noticing her observation. "Even now, injured and weak, he's on duty." "Protecting him from what?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's what we need to find out. Dogs like this don't just appear. They don't just get trapped in pipes by accident." He shifted Max's weight slightly. Something happened. Something bad enough to separate a military K9 from his handler. They reached Sarah's building, a modest 3-story complex with peeling paint and a broken security door that the landlord kept promising to fix. Sarah led them up to the second floor, fumbling with her keys as Tommy danced anxiously beside her. "Hurry, Mommy!" "He hurts." Inside the small 2-bedroom apartment, Daniel carefully laid Max on the living room rug. The dog immediately tried to stand, to position himself between Tommy and the door, but his legs gave out. "Easy, boy," Daniel soothed, his hands moving over Max with practiced skill, checking for injuries. "Sarah, do you have any clean towels? First aid kit?" She rushed to gather supplies while Tommy sat cross-legged beside Max, continuing his soft singing. When she returned, she found Daniel examining the collar more closely, his expression dark. "This tag's been deliberately damaged," he said. "Someone tried to remove identifying information, but didn't have time to finish." He looked up at her. This dog was running from something, or someone. "The bad man," Tommy said suddenly, his voice matter of fact. Both adults turned to stare at him. "What bad man, sweetheart?" Sarah asked, her heart beginning to race again. Tommy looked at Max, then back at his mother. "The one who hurt him." Max was protecting someone important, but the bad man came with a knife. His small finger pointed to the wound on Max's leg. Max had to run away to find help. He found us. Sarah's blood ran cold. The wound did look like a knife cut, clean, deliberate. She looked at Daniel, seeing her own alarm reflected in his eyes. "Tommy," Daniel said carefully, "did Max tell you this?" Tommy nodded solemnly. "He shows me things. In here." He tapped his temple. "Like pictures, but feelings too." Before either adult could respond, Max's head shot up, ears forward, a low growl building in his throat. He struggled to his feet despite his injuries, positioning himself between Tommy and the window. Daniel moved swiftly to the window, peering through the blinds. "Black sedan," he said quietly, "parked across the street. Tinted windows, engine running." "Could be anyone," Sarah said, but her voice shook. "Could be," Daniel agreed. "But Max doesn't think so." The dog's growl grew louder. Tommy wrapped his arms around Max's neck, and the growl stopped, replaced by a soft whine. "It's okay," Tommy whispered. "You're safe now. We won't let him hurt you again." Sarah watched her shy, anxious son comforting this massive wounded warrior of a dog, and felt something shift in her chest. Whatever was happening here, whatever danger Max might have brought to their door, she knew with sudden, absolute certainty that this dog and her son were meant to be together. "We need to call a vet," she said, pulling out her phone. "And maybe we should call the police too." "Not yet," Daniel said, still watching the street. "Not until we know more. If Max really is military, if he really was running from someone who tried to kill him," he turned from the window, "we need to be very careful about who we trust." The sedan's engine revved. Through the thin apartment walls, they heard it pull away, tires squealing slightly on the wet pavement. Max's body relaxed marginally, though he remained standing, swaying slightly. "He's going to collapse," Sarah said, her nursing instincts taking over. "Daniel, help me get him lying down. Tommy, get the big blanket from my closet." As they worked to make Max comfortable, cleaning his wound and giving him small sips of water, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their lives had just taken a dramatic turn. This morning, she'd been worried about being late for work. Now, she had a wounded military dog in her living room, her son claiming to communicate with him telepathically, and mysterious cars watching their building. "Mommy," Tommy said, returning with the blanket. "Max says thank you." Sarah looked at the dog, met those intelligent amber eyes, and could have sworn she saw understanding there. Real, human-level understanding. "You're welcome, Max," she whispered. The dog's tail thumped once against the floor, and despite everything, the danger, the mystery, the impossibility of it all, Sarah smiled. Daniel's phone buzzed. He looked at it, frowning. "I need to make some calls," he said. "I still have contacts who might be able to tell us if any military dogs have gone missing." He looked at Sarah. "Will you be okay for a few minutes?" She nodded, though she wasn't sure "okay" described anything about this situation. After Daniel left, Sarah sat with Tommy and Max, watching her son gently stroke the dog's head. Max's eyes were starting to close, exhaustion finally overtaking vigilance. "Tommy," she said softly, "when you say Max tells you things, what do you mean exactly?" Tommy thought about it, his face scrunched in concentration. "It's like, you know when you look at someone's face and you just know they're sad, even if they're smiling?" Sarah nodded. "It's like that, but more. I see pictures sometimes, feelings, like watching a movie but feeling it too." He looked at her with those serious eyes. "Max has been very sad and very scared, but also very brave. He had an important job and he couldn't finish it. Not until he found us." "What job, baby?" "Protecting the truth," Tommy said simply. "The bad man wanted to hide something bad he did. Max knows where the proof is." Sarah's mind raced. If this was true, and despite the impossibility of it, she found herself believing her son, then they were in real danger. Someone had tried to kill Max to keep him quiet. Would they come after anyone protecting him? She looked at Max, sleeping now, but still positioned to protect Tommy even in rest, and made a decision. Whatever the risks, she couldn't turn away. Not from Max, and not from whatever truth he carried. Her phone rang, startling her. The vet's office. She'd left a message earlier. "Mrs. Mitchell? This is Dr. Chen from Maplewood Animal Clinic. You said you have an injured German Shepherd?" "Yes, he's in bad shape. Infected wound, dehydration, possible internal injuries. Can you bring him in?" Sarah looked at Max, then at Tommy. He's very large and weak. Is there any chance you could come here?" There was a pause. "That's unusual, but I could stop by after clinic hours, around 6 inches. That would be perfect, thank you." As she hung up, Daniel returned, his expression grim. "What did you find out?" Sarah asked. Nothing good. He sat down heavily. 3 days ago, a K-9 handler named Officer Mark Hendricks was found dead in his home. Apparent suicide, but he glanced at Tommy, then continued more carefully. There were suspicious circumstances. His dog, a German shepherd named Max, was missing. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! There's more. Hendricks had been under investigation for connections to drug trafficking. He was supposed to testify before Internal Affairs the day after he died. So, someone killed him, Sarah said flatly, and tried to kill Max because Max knew something? Dogs can be trained to identify specific scents, specific people, Daniel explained. If Max was present during illegal activities, he could potentially identify everyone involved just by scent. Tommy, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. Max didn't like the other policemen who came to the house. They smelled wrong, like the bad things they were hiding. Daniel and Sarah exchanged looks. Tommy, Daniel said gently, did Max show you the policemen? Tommy nodded. 3 of them. They came at night. They hurt Max's person and tried to hurt Max too. But Max is smart. He ran through the window and kept running until he couldn't run anymore. The pipe, Sarah breathed. He was hiding in the pipe. From them, Tommy confirmed, but he got stuck when the rain made the ground soft and everything moved. It was impossible. Everything Tommy was saying was impossible, but the details lined up too perfectly with what Daniel had learned, and Max's behavior, his injuries, his obvious training. We need to protect him, Sarah said, surprising herself with the fierceness in her voice. If corrupt cops killed his handler and are looking for him, they won't stop, Daniel finished. As long as Max is alive, he's evidence. Max's eyes opened, as if he knew they were talking about him. He looked at each of them in turn, then struggled to sit up, placing his head on Tommy's lap. We won't let them hurt you, Tommy promised, his small arms wrapping around the dog's neck. We're your family now. Sarah wanted to correct him, to explain that they couldn't just claim someone else's dog, especially not one involved in a murder investigation. But looking at them together, her shy, anxious son, and this wounded warrior, she knew Tommy was right. Somehow, in the span of a few hours, Max had become theirs. Or maybe, she thought, remembering Daniel's words, they had become his. The sedan, Daniel said suddenly, moving back to the window. It's back. Same position as before. Max growled, low and threatening. They're watching us, Sarah said, fear creeping up her spine. They don't know for sure he's here, Daniel reasoned. They're probably checking every vet, every shelter, every place an injured dog might go. But they suspect, maybe. Daniel turned from the window. We need a plan. If they come for him, they can't have him, Tommy interrupted, his voice stronger than Sarah had ever heard it. Max has something important to show us, something about the bad men. If they take him, no one will ever know the truth. What truth, baby? Sarah asked. Tommy looked at Max, seeming to listen to something only he could hear. The place where they hide the bad things. Max knows where it is. His nose remembers. Daniel leaned forward. Tommy, this is important. Does Max know exactly where this place is? Tommy nodded. He could take us there. But he's too hurt right now, and scared. The bad men might be watching it. Sarah's mind was spinning. If Tommy was right, and God help her, she believed he was, then Max wasn't just a witness. He was a map to evidence that could expose a drug trafficking ring within the police force. No wonder someone wanted him dead. A knock at the door made them all jump. Max was on his feet instantly, despite his injuries, teeth bared. Who is it? Sarah called, her voice shaking. Mrs. Mitchell, it's Dr. Chen. You called about an injured dog? Sarah checked her phone. It was only 4 p.m. The vet wasn't supposed to come until 6. She looked at Daniel, who was already moving, positioning himself where he couldn't be seen from the door, but could act if needed. Just a minute, Sarah called. She peered through the peephole. It was indeed Dr. Chen, the elderly veterinarian she'd taken Tommy's hamster to last year. But why was she early? She opened the door cautiously. Dr. Chen, I wasn't expecting you until... I know, dear, the older woman said, stepping inside quickly and closing the door behind her. But I think we need to talk about the dog you found. Max growled louder. Dr. Chen looked at him, and her expression shifted. Oh my, that's definitely him. Him? Sarah's blood ran cold. You know Max? Every vet in the city got an alert about him yesterday, Doctor, Chen said, pulling out her phone to show them an email. Missing police K9, potentially dangerous, to be reported immediately if found. He's not dangerous, Tommy said firmly, standing between Doctor, Chen, and Max. I know, sweetheart, Doctor, Chen said gently. That's why I came early. Before anyone else might show up. She looked at Sarah. I've been a vet for 30 years. I've treated plenty of police dogs. This alert, something's not right about it. What do you mean? Daniel asked, stepping into view. Dr. Chen studied him for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. Police dogs who lose their handlers are never labeled potentially dangerous unless they've attacked someone. The alert also says Officer Hendricks is on medical leave, but she paused. My nephew works in the department. Hendricks is dead. So why are they lying? Because they killed him, Tommy said matter-of-factly. And they want to kill Max too. Dr. Chen's eyes widened, but she didn't dismiss the boy's words. Instead, she knelt slowly, letting Max sniff her hand. You've gotten yourself into something big, haven't you, boy? Max's tail wagged slightly, accepting her. Can you help him? Sarah asked. His leg is infected, and he's been through so much. Of course. Dr. Chen opened her bag. But first, we need to make sure no one knows he's here. That sedan across the street, it arrived right after I did. They all froze. They followed you? Daniel said grimly. Or they were already watching and saw me come in with my medical bag, Doctor, Chen replied. Either way, we don't have much time. As if on cue, Max's growl deepened. Through the window, they could see car doors opening. 2 men in dark clothing stepped out, their faces obscured by baseball caps. They're coming, Daniel said. Sarah, take Tommy and Max to the bedroom, lock the door. What are you going to do? Buy you time? He looked at Dr. Chen. Can you call your nephew? Tell him what's happening. She was already dialing. Kevin, it's Aunt Linda. I need you to listen very carefully. Sarah grabbed Tommy's hand and Max's collar, pulling them toward the bedroom. But Max resisted, planting his feet, his attention fixed on the door. Max, come on, Sarah pleaded. He won't run, Tommy said. Not again. He's tired of running. A heavy knock shook the door. Mrs. Mitchell, police. We need to speak with you about a missing dog. Sarah's heart hammered. She looked at Daniel, who shook his head slightly. Real police would have identified themselves properly, shown badges through the peephole. Just a minute, Sarah called, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm not dressed. Whispering came from outside, then the doorknob rattled. They were trying to pick the lock. Bedroom now, Daniel ordered. This time Max came, but he positioned himself facing the bedroom door, ready for whatever was coming. Sarah could hear Dr. Chen on the phone, speaking urgently to her nephew. The front door burst open, heavy footsteps. Daniel's voice, calm but firm. Gentlemen, you're trespassing. I'll need to see some identification. Where's the dog? A rough voice, no pretense of being police now. What dog? Daniel replied evenly. The sound of a scuffle, something crashing. Tommy pressed against Sarah, trembling. Max stood firm, a low, continuous growl building in his chest. Mommy, we have to help him, Tommy whispered. We have to stay safe, Sarah whispered back, though every instinct screamed at her to act. More crashing, a grunt of pain, Daniel's voice. Then Dr. Chen, loud and clear. The police are on their way. The real police. My nephew is 3 blocks away with backup. Cursing from the living room, running footsteps, the sound of the front door slamming. Sarah waited, counting to 30 before carefully opening the bedroom door. Daniel was on the floor, blood running from his nose, but already sitting up. Dr. Chen stood by the window, watching the street. They're gone, she reported, speeding away like the criminals they are. Sarah rushed to Daniel, her nursing instincts taking over. Let me see. I'm fine, he said, though he winced as she touched his nose. Not broken. They were more interested in searching than fighting once they heard about the backup coming. Did they find anything? No, but they'll be back, or others will. Daniel looked at Max, who had emerged from the bedroom with Tommy at his side. We can't stay here. Sirens approached. Through the window, they could see actual police cars arriving, lights flashing. Dr. Chen's nephew, presumably. Can we trust him? Sarah asked. Kevin's a good kid, Doctor, Chen said. One of the few honest cops left, he says. That's why he's still a patrol officer after 5 years. The next hour was a blur of statements and questions. Officer Kevin Chen, young and earnest, listened to their story with growing alarm. He took photos of Daniel's injuries, of Max's wound, of the damaged door. This is big, he said finally. Bigger than I can handle alone. But I know someone who can help. Detective Rivera from Internal Affairs. She's been investigating corruption in the department for months. Can she protect Max? Tommy asked, his first words since the police arrived. Kevin looked at the boy, then at the dog. She'll try. But honestly, you might be safer if no one knows where Max is for now. I have a cabin, Daniel said suddenly. Up north, about 2 hours. It's isolated, secure. We could take Max there while this gets sorted out. Sarah's first instinct was to refuse. She couldn't just leave with a man she barely knew, even if he had protected them. But looking at Tommy, still pressed against Max's side, and thinking about those men who had burst into her home. We'll go, she said, just until it's safe. Dr. Chen finished treating Max's wound, providing antibiotics and pain medication. He needs rest, proper food, and time to heal. The infection's bad, but not life-threatening if treated properly. As they prepared to leave, Tommy suddenly grabbed Sarah's hand. Mommy, wait. Max wants to show us something. Before anyone could respond, Max limped to the corner of the living room where Tommy's toy box sat. He pawed at it, whining. What is it, boy? Daniel asked. Max became more insistent, actually pushing the toy box aside with his head, despite the obvious pain it caused him. Underneath, barely visible, was a small hole in the floorboard. Kevin knelt down, pulling out a pocket knife to pry at the board. It came up easily, revealing a hidden space beneath. Inside was a plastic bag containing what looked like a flash drive. How did he know that was there? Kevin breathed. He didn't, Sarah said, understanding flooding through her. He was showing us what to look for. Somewhere else, there's something hidden just like this. Tommy nodded. The bad men hid their stuff the same way. Max remembers the smell, the way it looked. He's trying to teach us. Kevin carefully bagged the flash drive. I'll get this to Detective Rivera. If there's something hidden that Max can lead us to. It could blow the whole corruption ring wide open, Daniel finished. Max swayed on his feet, the effort of his demonstration having exhausted him. Tommy immediately wrapped his arms around the dog's neck, supporting him. It's okay, the boy whispered. You did good. You showed them. Now you can rest. As Daniel carried Max to his truck, Sarah gathering hasty supplies for their unexpected trip, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Max had chosen them for a reason. Tommy's strange connection to the dog, Daniel's convenient appearance with exactly the skills they needed, even Doctor. Chen's nephew being one of the few honest cops. It all felt orchestrated somehow, like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Ready? Daniel asked, securing Max in the back of the truck where Tommy could sit with him. Sarah looked back at her apartment, at the life she was temporarily leaving behind. This morning, her biggest worry had been being late for work. Now she was running from corrupt cops with an injured military dog who apparently held the key to exposing a criminal conspiracy. Mommy, Tommy called from the truck. Max says it's okay. He says we're doing the right thing. She climbed into the passenger seat, watching in the mirror as Tommy gently stroked Max's head, the dog's eyes already closing in exhausted sleep. I hope Max is right, she murmured. Daniel started the engine. Dogs like Max are rarely wrong about the important things. As they pulled away, Sarah noticed the black sedan parked at the end of the street, engine running. It didn't follow them, but she knew it wasn't over. They'd be back. The only question was whether Max would be ready to face them when they did. Tommy began singing again, soft and low, the same lullaby from that morning that felt like a lifetime ago. Max's tail thumped once against the truck bed, and despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the complete upheaval of their lives, Sarah felt a strange peace settle over her. They were together. Tommy, Max, and even Daniel, this stranger who had risked everything to help them. It wasn't the family she'd planned, but looking at her son's face, seeing a confidence there she'd never seen before, she thought maybe it was the family they needed. The road stretched ahead, leading to an uncertain future, but for now, Max was safe. Tommy was smiling, and that was enough. He's special, isn't he? she said to Daniel. Max, I mean... Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror at the sleeping dog. They both are, he said quietly. Your son and Max. I've seen a lot of military dogs, worked with dozens of them. But this connection... He shook his head. I've never seen anything like it. Tommy says Max shows him things. Pictures, feelings. You believe him? Sarah thought about it. Even a day ago, she would have dismissed it as childhood imagination. But after everything she'd witnessed... Yes, she said simply. I do. Daniel nodded. Good. Because if Tommy's right, if Max really can lead us to evidence, then your son might be the key to all of this. He's just a little boy, Sarah said, maternal fear rising. He is, Daniel agreed, but he's also the one Max chose. And that dog doesn't make mistakes. In the back, Tommy had curled up against Max, both of them sleeping now. Sarah watched them in the mirror, boy and dog, two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely way. The sun was setting as they headed north, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere behind them, dangerous men were planning their next move. Somewhere ahead, a cabin waited to shelter them. And somewhere, hidden in a place only Max could find, evidence waited that could bring justice for a murdered officer and expose the corruption that had killed him. Sarah closed her eyes, listening to the rhythm of the truck's engine and Tommy's peaceful breathing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers. But tonight, they were together, they were safe, and they were heading towards something that felt surprisingly like hope. Thank you, she said to Daniel. For everything. Don't thank me yet, he replied, but there was warmth in his voice. This is far from over. I know. Sarah opened her eyes, watching the road ahead. But, for the first time in a long time, I feel like we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Max stirred in his sleep, his paw reaching out to rest on Tommy's leg, protective even in dreams. And Sarah knew, with a certainty that defied logic, that whatever came next, they would face it together. The story of a boy, a dog, and a truth worth fighting for had only just begun. The truck's headlights cut through the darkness as they wound deeper into the mountains. Tommy had been asleep for an hour, his head resting against Max's side, but the dog remained alert despite his exhaustion. Every few minutes, those amber eyes would open, scan the mirrors, check on Tommy, then close again. Never truly resting, always on guard. He doesn't trust easily, does he? Sarah observed, watching Max's vigilant behavior. Daniel glanced in the rearview mirror. Dogs like him are trained to never fully relax. Even sleeping, part of their mind stays active, monitoring for threats. He paused. Probably saved his life when they came for his handler. Sarah shuddered at the thought. How much further? About 20 minutes. The cabin's off the grid. No neighbors for miles. Only one road in or out. We'll see anyone coming long before they reach us. And if they do come, Daniel's jaw tightened, then we deal with it. But they'd have to know where we are first, and I've been careful. No credit cards, phones off, took back roads most of the way. In the back, Max suddenly lifted his head, a low whine escaping his throat. Tommy stirred, his eyes fluttering open. What is it, buddy? The boy murmured, still half asleep. Max's attention was fixed on something outside the window, darkness and trees, nothing Sarah could see that warranted concern. Mommy, Tommy said, more awake now, Max smells something wrong. Daniel immediately slowed the truck, pulling to the shoulder. He killed the headlights, leaving them in darkness except for the faint moonlight filtering through clouds. What kind of wrong? He asked quietly. Tommy was silent for a moment, his small hand on Max's head. Like the smell from the bad men's clothes, but old, from before. Daniel and Sarah exchanged glances. Someone's been here recently, Daniel interpreted. Same cologne or cigarette brand, maybe. Max is picking up the scent trail. Should we turn back? Sarah asked, fear creeping into her voice. Daniel considered, then shook his head. If they knew about the cabin, they'd be waiting there, not leaving scent trails on the road. This might be from earlier, someone checking possible hiding spots. He restarted the engine, but kept the lights off, driving slowly by moonlight. Sarah's heart pounded as they crept forward, every shadow potentially hiding danger. After 5 tense minutes, Daniel finally turned the headlights back on. We're almost there. The turnoff is... Max barked sharply just once, a warning. Daniel slammed on the brakes just as a figure stepped into the road ahead. Sarah gasped, instinctively reaching back to shield Tommy. But it wasn't one of the men from the apartment. It was a woman, elderly, wearing a bathrobe and slippers, waving her arms frantically. "Please!" she called out. "Please help! There's been an accident!" Daniel didn't move to get out. His hand went to his hip, where Sarah now noticed he wore a concealed holster. "Stay in the truck," he said quietly. "Doors locked." "Daniel," Sarah started. "This could be a trap." Oldest trick in the book. He looked back at Max. What does he think? Max was alert, but not growling. His ears were forward, interested, but not threatened. "Max says she's really scared," Tommy reported. "But not lying scared, real scared." Daniel made a decision. He grabbed a flashlight and slowly got out, keeping the truck between him and the woman. "Ma'am?" "What happened?" "My husband." The woman was crying now, genuine tears Sarah could see even from the truck. "We hit a deer and went off the road. He's trapped. His leg. Please, I can't get him out." "Where?" Daniel asked. "Just around the bend. Please, he's diabetic. He needs help." Daniel looked back at Sarah. She read the conflict in his eyes, the need to help warring with the need to protect them. "Go," Sarah said. "We'll be fine. Max will protect us." Daniel nodded tightly. "Lock the doors. If anything seems wrong, drive. Don't wait for me." He jogged after the woman, flashlight beam bouncing. Sarah immediately locked the doors, her hand shaking as she gripped the keys Daniel had left in the ignition. "Mommy, it's okay," Tommy said. "Max says the lady is telling the truth, but what, baby?" Someone else was here. Before, watching the road. Tommy's face scrunched in concentration. Max can smell where they stood. Over there, in the trees. Sarah peered into the darkness where Tommy pointed but saw nothing. Still, she trusted Max's senses and Tommy's interpretation of them. Long minutes passed. Then Daniel's flashlight appeared, supporting an elderly man who was limping badly. Behind them, the woman carried what looked like medical supplies from their car. Sarah unlocked the doors as Daniel helped the injured man sit on the truck's tailgate. His pants were torn and bloody at the knee, the joint swollen. "Definitely broken," Daniel assessed. "We need to get him to a hospital." "I'm a nurse," Sarah said, getting out to help. Her training took over as she examined the injury. "Mr. Peterson. Jim Peterson. This is my wife, Margaret." The man grimaced as Sarah gently probed the injury. "We were heading to our daughter's house when that deer came out of nowhere." "The nearest hospital is 40 minutes back the way we came," Daniel said. "But there's an urgent care clinic in Pine Ridge, about 15 minutes north." "We can't ask you to," Margaret started. "You're not asking. We're offering," Sarah said firmly. She looked at Daniel. "We can't leave them here." Daniel nodded, though she could see his reluctance to deviate from their plan. They carefully loaded Jim into the truck bed, where there was more room for his injured leg, Margaret beside him. Sarah climbed in back with Tommy and Max to make room. As they drove toward Pine Ridge, Max remained tense, his attention split between watching the Petersons and scanning the darkness outside. Tommy leaned against his mother, whispering, "Max doesn't like this. Too many smells that don't belong." Sarah stroked her son's hair. "Just a little longer, baby. We help people who need it, right? That's what heroes do." Tommy nodded, but his hand stayed buried in Max's fur, drawing comfort from the dog's solid presence. The urgent care clinic was a small building, with harsh fluorescent lights that made everyone look sick. Daniel and Sarah helped Jim inside while Margaret handled the paperwork. Tommy stayed in the truck with Max, both of them watching through the window. "You folks aren't from around here," the receptionist noted, eyeing their disheveled appearance. "Just passing through," Daniel said smoothly. "Heading to visit family." As they waited, Sarah noticed Daniel's constant vigilance, checking exits, watching everyone who entered, keeping himself positioned between the door and where she sat. His military training, she realized, never really left. After an hour, Jim was treated and given crutches. The Petersons thanked them profusely, Margaret pressing a crumpled $20 bill into Sarah's hand despite her protests. "Angels," Margaret kept saying. "You're angels." As they finally left Pine Ridge, Daniel took a different route. In case anyone's asking questions about strangers helping injured people, he explained. The cabin appeared suddenly in the headlights, a modest wooden structure that looked like it had grown from the forest itself. Daniel parked behind it, hiding the truck from the access road. "Home sweet safe house," he said, attempting lightness that didn't reach his eyes. Max needed help getting out, his injured leg stiff from the long ride. But once on the ground, he immediately began patrol behavior, circling the cabin, nose to the ground. "He's checking if anyone's been here," Tommy explained unnecessarily. The cabin was simple but clean, one main room with a kitchen area, a bedroom, and a loft. Daniel immediately checked every window, every lock, while Sarah helped Tommy settle Max on a thick rug near the fireplace. "I'll take first watch," Daniel said. "You and Tommy take the bedroom. Max will alert us if anyone approaches." Sarah wanted to argue about him staying up all night, but exhaustion was hitting her hard. The adrenaline of the day finally wearing off left her shaky and drained. "Come on, baby," she said to Tommy. "Let's get some sleep." "Max, too," Tommy insisted. The dog was already struggling to his feet, determined to follow. Daniel helped him into the bedroom, where he immediately positioned himself between the bed and the door. As Sarah tucked Tommy in, her son looked up at her with those two wise eyes. "Mommy, Max showed me something." "What, sweetheart?" "The place where the bad men hide things. It's not far from here. Maybe that's why we're supposed to be here." Sarah's blood chilled. "Tommy, we're here to keep Max safe, not to..." "But that's not what Max wants. He wants to finish his job. He wants the bad men to get caught so no one else gets hurt like his person did." Before Sarah could respond, Max lifted his head, ears swiveling toward the window. A second later, Daniel appeared in the doorway. "Car coming up the access road. Lights off, moving slow." Sarah's heart hammered. How did they find us? Maybe they didn't. Could be kids looking for a place to party, or... Daniel stopped as Max began to growl, low and menacing. "Or not. Sarah, there's a root cellar under the kitchen. Take Tommy and..." "No." Tommy's voice was firm. "Max says we need to see who it is. It might be the good police lady." As if on cue, a phone buzzed. Daniel pulled out a burner phone Sarah hadn't known he had. "It's Kevin," he said, reading a text. "Detective Rivera wants to meet. She's..." He looked up. "She's here." That must be her car. Max's growl subsided, but didn't stop entirely. He didn't trust easily, even supposed allies. Daniel went out to meet the detective while Sarah watched from the window. The woman who got out of the unmarked car was tall, mid-40s, with sharp eyes that took in everything. She showed her badge, spoke quietly with Daniel, then looked directly at the window where Sarah stood. "It's okay," Daniel called. "She's alone. She has information." Detective Rivera entered the cabin with the controlled movements of someone always ready for trouble. Her eyes immediately found Max, and something like recognition crossed her face. "So, you're the dog everyone's looking for," she said softly. "Hendrik's partner." Max watched her steadily, neither welcoming nor hostile. "Detective Rivera, this is Sarah and Tommy," Daniel introduced. "They found Max." "Actually, Max found us," Tommy corrected, stepping closer to the dog protectively. Rivera studied the boy with interest. "Is that so? And how did he manage that? He was stuck in a pipe near our house. But he meant to be there. He knew we would help. Most adults would have dismissed this as childhood fancy, but Rivera nodded thoughtfully. Hendrik's always said Max was special, more intuitive than any dog he'd worked with. "You knew Officer Hendricks?" Sarah asked. "Mark was a good cop once, before." Rivera's expression darkened. "Before they got to him. Threatened his daughter, his ex-wife. They forced him to help with their operations." "Who's they?" Daniel asked. "A group within the department, 3 officers at least, possibly more. They've been using police resources to run drugs, taking evidence from busts and reselling it." She looked at Max. Mark started documenting everything, preparing to come forward, but they found out. "And killed him," Sarah said flatly. "Made it look like suicide, but Mark was too smart for that. He hid the evidence somewhere, and I think Max knows where." All eyes turned to the German shepherd, who sat calmly beside Tommy, giving nothing away. "Tommy says Max has been trying to show us," Sarah said carefully. "Hidden spaces, things under floors." Rivera leaned forward intently. "Mark had a storage unit, We found it, but it was empty except for dog toys and training equipment. But if Max knows about another location, the bad men have a place too, Tommy said suddenly. Max has been there. It smells like the bad things they sell and like fear. Can he take us there? Rivera asked. He's injured, Sarah protested. And it's dangerous. It's more dangerous to wait, Rivera interrupted. They know Max is alive. They know someone's protecting him. Every day we delay gives them more time to move their operation, destroy evidence, or worse, find you. Max stood up, limping to the door. He looked back at them expectantly. He wants to go now, Tommy translated, while it's dark, while they won't expect it. Daniel and Rivera exchanged glances. It's risky, Daniel said. Everything about this is risky, Rivera replied. But if we can get evidence tonight, I can have arrest warrants by morning. Sarah wanted to say no, to protect Tommy from whatever danger lay ahead. But looking at her son's determined face, at Max's steady gaze, she knew this was bigger than her fear. We all go, she said. Tommy and Max need each other, and I'm not leaving my son. Rivera nodded. Fair enough. But we do this my way, careful, quiet, and ready to run if needed. They prepared quickly, Daniel checking weapons, Rivera making calls to arrange backup at a safe distance, Sarah packing emergency supplies. Max watched it all with approval, his tail wagging slightly for the first time since the rescue. Where are we going? Daniel asked as they loaded into Rivera's car, larger and more equipped than the truck. Max moved to the front, placing his paw on the window. Tommy closed his eyes, concentrating. Turn left at the road, Tommy said. Max knows the way. They drove in tense silence, following Tommy's translations of Max's guidance. Left here, straight for 2 miles, right at the old barn. The dog's memory was remarkable, navigating by scent memories and landmarks only he could perceive. After 20 minutes, they were in an industrial area Sarah didn't recognize. Abandoned warehouses lined the street, windows broken, walls covered in graffiti. Stop here, Tommy said suddenly. Max was staring at a building that looked no different from the others. Broken windows, rusted doors, weeds growing through cracked concrete. But the dog's entire body was rigid with recognition. That's it? Rivera asked. Max whined softly, his injured leg trembling from the strain of standing. He says there's usually someone watching, Tommy reported, but not tonight. They're somewhere else. Rivera pulled out her phone, texting rapidly. Backup's 10 minutes out. We wait. Max barked sharply and pawed at the door. His meaning was clear, now or never. Something's wrong, Tommy said, his voice urgent. Max says they're moving everything tonight. If we wait, it'll all be gone. Rivera made a decision. Daniel, you're with me. Sarah, keep Tommy and Max in the car. If anything goes wrong, we run, Sarah finished. I know. But as Rivera and Daniel approached the warehouse, Max began thrashing against the restraint of Sarah's arms. His desperation was painful to watch. Mommy, we have to go too, Tommy pleaded. Max needs to show them exactly where. They won't find it without him. Against every maternal instinct, Sarah found herself opening the door. Max immediately bounded out despite his injury, Tommy right behind him. Sarah had no choice but to follow. The warehouse door was unlocked, hanging slightly open. Inside, darkness swallowed them whole, except for thin moonlight through broken windows. The smell hit immediately. Chemicals, rot, something sweet and cloying that made Sarah's stomach turn. Max led them through the maze of empty space and abandoned equipment, his nose to the ground, following a trail only he could detect. Tommy kept one hand on the dog's back, both for guidance and comfort. They found Rivera and Daniel standing before a wall that looked solid, but which Max was pawing at insistently. Hidden door, Daniel said, finding the seams. Recently used. The dust patterns are disturbed. The door swung open to reveal stairs leading down. Fluorescent lights flickered below, and voices echoed up. Angry, urgent voices. They're still here, Rivera whispered, drawing her weapon. We need to... The voices stopped, then footsteps, running, getting closer. Hide! Daniel hissed, pulling Sarah and Tommy behind a stack of crates. Rivera took position behind a pillar. 3 men burst from the hidden door, carrying boxes. Sarah recognized one immediately, the man who had broken into her apartment. He was shouting orders to the others. "Forget the rest! Torch it and go!" One man dropped his box, pulling out what looked like a gas can. This was it. They were going to destroy everything. Max made the decision for them. With a fierce bark, he launched himself at the man with the gas can, his powerful jaws clamping onto the man's arm. The can went flying, gas splashing across the floor. "Max!" Tommy screamed, breaking free from Sarah's grip. Everything happened at once. Rivera shouting, "Police! Nobody move!" Daniel rushing forward, the men scattering. One pulled a gun, aiming at Max. Tommy threw himself forward, his small body shielding the dog. "No!" The gun fired. Sarah screamed, but the bullet went wide as Daniel tackled the shooter. Rivera had another man on the ground. The third was running. Max released his grip on the first man's arm and went after the runner with shocking speed despite his injury. He brought him down just before he reached the exit, standing over him with teeth bared. "Good boy, Max!" Tommy called, running to the dog. "Good boy!" Rivera was already on her radio, calling for immediate backup. Within minutes, the warehouse was swarming with police. The honest ones Rivera had carefully selected. The hidden basement was a jackpot. Not just drugs, but records. Detailed accounts of every transaction, every bribe, every crime. Names, dates, amounts. Everything needed to bring down the entire corruption ring. "How did they keep such detailed records?" Sarah asked, watching as evidence was cataloged. "Insurance," Rivera explained. "Criminals don't trust each other. They keep records to protect themselves if someone turns on them." But the real discovery came when Max led them to a specific box in the corner, pawing at it insistently. Inside were documents, a flash drive, and a DVD labeled simply security footage. Rivera played the DVD on her laptop. It showed Officer Hendricks in his home, very much alive, as three men entered. Sarah covered Tommy's eyes as the footage showed what came next, but the audio was clear. Threats, demands, and finally, murder, staged to look like suicide. "This is it," Rivera breathed. "This proves everything." Max sat down heavily, his job finally done. Tommy immediately wrapped his arms around him, and this time, the dog's tail wagged freely. "You did it, Max," Tommy whispered. "You got the bad men." The arrests happened quickly. By dawn, 7 officers were in custody, including a deputy chief. The news exploded across the city. Hero dog exposes police corruption. Max's photo was everywhere, though Rivera kept the location of the dog and his rescuers secret for their protection. 3 days later, they were back at the cabin. Max's leg was healing well with proper treatment, and his eyes had lost that haunted, vigilant look. He actually played with Tommy now, chasing balls and rolling in the grass like a normal dog. "Detective Rivera called," Daniel said, joining Sarah on the porch where she watched boy and dog playing. "The case is solid. All 7 are being held without bail." "Good," Sarah said, though she felt no satisfaction, only relief. "There's more. The city wants to give Max a commendation. And," Daniel hesitated, "Hendricks' ex-wife reached out. She wants to meet Max to thank him for getting justice for Mark." Sarah's throat tightened. "What about Max himself? What happens to him now?" "Technically, he belongs to the police department, but given everything that's happened, Rivera pulled some strings. If we want to adopt him officially." "We?" Sarah looked at him, surprised by the plural. Daniel flushed slightly. "I mean, you and Tommy." "Though," he paused, watching Tommy throw a stick for Max. "I've gotten kind of attached to the big guy myself." Sarah studied this man, who had appeared in their lives at exactly the right moment, who had risked everything to help them. "Daniel, can I ask you something? Why did you help us that first day? You didn't know us." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "I had a dog once, in Afghanistan. Saved my life more times than I can count. When our convoy hit an IED, his voice caught. She didn't make it. But she detected the second bomb, warned us in time, saved 8 soldiers. I'm sorry," Sarah said softly. "When I saw Max in that drain, saw that same trained alertness even while injured, I couldn't walk away. And then seeing him with Tommy." Daniel smiled slightly. "It was like watching 2 souls recognize each other. You don't interfere with something like that." "No," Sarah agreed. "You don't." Tommy ran up to them, Max limping beside him. "Mom! Daniel! Max wants to show you something." They followed the dog to the edge of the property where a small stream ran through the trees. Max waded in carefully, then looked back at them expectantly. "He wants to play in the water," Tommy laughed. "He says he's tired of being careful all the time." It was such a normal dog thing to want that Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. After everything Max had been through, he was finally able to just be a dog. "Well," Daniel said, rolling up his pants legs, "are we going in or not?" Tommy whooped with joy, splashing into the stream. Sarah followed, gasping at the cold, but laughing as Max bounded through the water, sending spray everywhere. Later, as they sat by the fire drying off, Rivera arrived with paperwork. "Max's official adoption papers," she announced. "Just need a signature." Sarah took the pen, then paused. Tommy should sign too. Max chose him first. Tommy carefully wrote his name in wobbly letters next to Sarah's signature. Max watched the whole process, and when it was done, he placed his paw on the paper, leaving a muddy print. "I think that makes it official," Rivera laughed. That night, as Sarah tucked Tommy into bed with Max curled up beside him, her son said something that stopped her cold. "Mommy, Max says thank you." "For what, baby?" "For helping him remember how to trust. He forgot for a while after his person died, but we reminded him that there are still good people." Sarah kissed her son's forehead, marveling at the wisdom in someone so young. "You know what? I think Max reminded us of something too." "What?" Tommy asked sleepily. "That sometimes the best families are the ones you don't expect. The ones that find each other when they need each other most." Tommy smiled, already drifting off. "Like us and Max and Daniel?" Sarah glanced at the doorway where Daniel stood watching, having heard everything. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, understanding, possibility, hope. "Yeah, baby," she said softly. "Exactly like that." 6 months later, Sarah stood in a courtroom, her hand on a Bible, swearing to tell the truth. Across the room, 7 former police officers sat in orange jumpsuits, their faces grim. The corruption trial was the biggest in the city's history. "Can you identify the men who broke into your apartment?" the prosecutor asked. Sarah pointed without hesitation. "Those 2. They were looking for Max." In the witness waiting room, Tommy sat with Max, who was now officially certified as a therapy dog. They visited schools, teaching children about bravery and doing the right thing even when it's scary. Max's story had become legend, but Tommy always reminded people that Max was just doing his job, protecting truth and justice. Daniel had become a permanent fixture in their lives. He'd taught Tommy basic self-defense, helped train Max in new commands, and somehow, without anyone really discussing it, had moved from the cabin to an apartment just 2 doors down from theirs. "Just keeping an eye on my team," he'd said casually, but Sarah had seen the way he looked at her, at Tommy, at the family they'd become. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Max testified too, in his way, demonstrating his training, identifying evidence by scent, showing the jury exactly how remarkable these K-9 officers could be. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom when the prosecutor played the video of Max's reunion with Hendrix's daughter, the dog recognizing her immediately despite months of separation. All 7 defendants were convicted. Sentences ranged from 15 years to life. As they were led away, Max watched calmly from his place beside Tommy. Justice finally served. That evening, they celebrated quietly at home. Sarah, Tommy, Daniel, Max, and even Dr. Chen and Kevin, who had become regular visitors. As they shared pizza and stories, Sarah realized this patchwork group had become something she'd never expected. A real family. "Mom," Tommy said suddenly, "can I tell everyone something?" "Of course, sweetheart." Tommy stood, suddenly looking older than his 5 years. "Max wants everyone to know something important. He says—" Tommy paused, looking at the dog who gazed back with those wise amber eyes. "He says every dog has a job. Some protect houses, some help sick people, some just make their families happy. But the most important job is teaching humans how to love without asking for anything back." The room was silent for a moment. Then Dr. Chen raised her glass of soda. "To Max, who reminded us all how to be brave." "To Max," everyone echoed. The German shepherd's tail wagged as he accepted a piece of pizza from Tommy, his eyes bright. "And content. The scared, injured dog from the sewer pipe was gone, replaced by a confident, happy animal who had found his purpose again. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Sarah found herself on the porch with Daniel watching the stars. Max lay between them, Tommy asleep against his fur. "Quite a journey," Daniel said softly. "It's not over," Sarah replied. "Rivera says there might be connections to other cities. Max might need to help with more cases." "Then we'll face them together," Daniel said, his hand finding hers. "All of us." Sarah squeezed his hand, feeling the solid presence of this man who had become their protector, their friend, and maybe something more. "Daniel?" she said. "Yeah? That first day when you helped get Max out. You said dogs like him choose their people for a reason." "I did. Do you think—" She hesitated. "Do you think people choose each other the same way? Recognizing something they need?" Daniel turned to look at her fully. "I think," he said carefully, "that sometimes we get lucky. Sometimes we find exactly who we need exactly when we need them, even if we don't realize it at first." "And sometimes," Sarah added, looking down at Tommy and Max, "they come in unexpected packages. A scared little boy and a wounded dog who needed each other. And a single mom brave enough to stop when everyone else walked by," Daniel added. "And a broken soldier who needed to remember why protecting others mattered." Max's eyes opened, looking from one to the other with what could only be described as satisfaction. His tail thumped once, twice, as if agreeing with everything being said. "He approves," Sarah laughed softly. "He usually does," Daniel replied. "Max knows good things when he sees them." A year passed. The story of Max and Tommy had spread far beyond their city. They received letters from children all over the country, drawing pictures of Max, sharing their own stories of brave pets. Tommy, with help from Sarah, wrote back to every single one. The corruption case had led to a complete overhaul of the police department. New policies were put in place, including expanded K-9 programs with better protection for the dogs and their handlers. A foundation was started in Officer Hendrix's name to support families of officers killed in the line of duty. Max had fully healed, though he carried a slight limp that gave him what Daniel called character. He and Tommy were inseparable, the dog walking him to school every morning, waiting patiently outside until the final bell. But the biggest change came on a sunny Saturday in spring. "Tommy," Sarah said, kneeling beside her son in their living room, "Daniel and I have something to tell you." Tommy looked up from where he was brushing Max's fur. "Are you getting married?" he asked matter-of-factly. Sarah's mouth fell open. "How did you—" "Max told me," Tommy said simply. "He saw Daniel hiding the ring in his sock drawer." Daniel laughed, pulling out a small, velvet box. "That dog really can't keep a secret." "So?" Tommy asked. "Are you—" "Only if it's okay with you," Sarah said. "You and Max are the most important—" "Yes," Tommy interrupted, throwing his arms around both of them. "Max says yes too." The wedding was small, held in the park where Max now trained with other rescue dogs. Detective Rivera officiated. She'd gotten ordained online just for the occasion. Kevin was Daniel's best man. Dr. Chen walked Sarah down the aisle, and Tommy and Max served as ring bearers, the rings tied to Max's collar with a ribbon. As Sarah and Daniel exchanged vows, Max sat perfectly still beside Tommy, watching with those intelligent eyes that had seen so much. When Daniel kissed Sarah, Max barked once. Approval, blessing, and joy all rolled into one sound. The reception was at the community center, filled with neighbors, cops from the reformed department, and families Max had helped through his therapy work. Hendrix's ex-wife and daughter were there, the girl now inseparable from a German Shepherd puppy they'd adopted in Max's honor. During the toasts, Tommy stood up, tapping his juice glass with a spoon for attention. "I want to say something," he announced, his voice clear and confident, so different from the shy boy of a year ago. "Last year I was scared of everything. I didn't have friends. I didn't talk much. Then Max came. He looked at the dog, who was watching him intently. Max was hurt and scared too, but we helped each other be brave. He taught me that being scared is okay, as long as you don't let it stop you from doing what's right." Tommy's eyes moved to Daniel, and Daniel taught me that real strength is about protecting others, not hurting them. Finally, he looked at his mother. "Mom, you taught me that sometimes the best thing you can do is stop and help, even when you're busy, even when it's hard." Sarah was crying now, not even trying to hide it. "So," Tommy continued, "I want to thank Max for finding us. Because he didn't just save those people from the bad cops. He saved us too. He made us a family." The room erupted in applause. Max stood up, tail wagging furiously, and walked to Tommy. The boy hugged him tight, and in that moment, Sarah saw everything clearly. How a crisis had become a blessing. How a wounded dog had healed them all. How sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. 5 years passed in what felt like a heartbeat. Tommy was 10 now, still small for his age, but with a confidence that made him seem taller. He'd started a club at school called Canine Heroes, teaching other kids about service dogs and raising money for animal shelters. Max was showing his age, gray creeping into his muzzle, his movements a bit slower. But his spirit remained strong. He still walked Tommy to school, still did therapy visits, still positioned himself protectively whenever he sensed someone needed guarding. Daniel had officially adopted Tommy, giving the boy the father he'd never had. Their apartment had been traded for a house with a big backyard where Max could sun himself, and where they'd added 2 more rescue dogs to their pack, both trained by Max himself in his patient, methodical way. Sarah had left hospital nursing to work with a program training therapy dogs for veterans with PTSD. Every day she saw dogs like Max helping broken people heal, and every day she thought about that foggy morning when she'd almost walked past the storm drain. One evening, as they sat on their back deck watching Tommy play with the dogs, Sarah's phone rang. It was Rivera, now chief of police. "Sarah, I have an unusual request. There's a situation in Chicago. A dog who witnessed a murder but won't respond to anyone. The handler thinks, well, she thinks we need Tommy and Max." Sarah looked at her son, throwing a frisbee while Max directed the younger dogs in the chase, and felt a familiar flutter of fear. But then Max looked at her, those amber eyes still sharp and knowing, and she saw his tail wag once. Permission, encouragement, trust. "We'll be there," she said. The Chicago case was complicated. A police dog whose handler had been killed by a serial killer, the dog traumatized into complete shutdown. No one could get close to him. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't move, just lay in his kennel staring at nothing. Tommy walked into the shelter with Max beside him. The moment Max saw the other dog, a young Belgian Malinois named Ranger, he whined softly. Tommy knelt by Ranger's kennel, not speaking, just sitting quietly while Max lay down nearby. For an hour, nothing happened. Then Ranger's ear twitched. His eyes shifted slightly, focusing on Max. Some silent communication passed between the dogs, and slowly, painfully, Ranger crawled toward the kennel door. "It's okay," Tommy said softly. "Max knows. He lost his person too, but it gets better. The hurt doesn't go away, but you find new people to protect, new jobs to do." Ranger's tail moved, barely a twitch, but movement nonetheless. Within a week, he was eating again, responding to commands, and had bonded with a young officer who reminded him of his lost handler. Another life saved by the boy who could hear what dogs were really saying, and the German shepherd who'd taught him how to listen. The flight home was quiet, Tommy asleep against Daniel's shoulder, Max's head resting on the boy's lap. Sarah watched them, her little family born from tragedy and trust, and marveled at the journey. "Proud of you," Daniel said softly, taking her hand. "For what?" "For stopping that morning, for listening to Tommy, for being brave enough to let Max into our lives, even when it was dangerous." "I almost didn't," Sarah admitted. "I was so scared of being late, of the responsibility, of everything changing. But you did stop, because Tommy begged me to, because he said heroes don't walk away." Daniel smiled. "Smart kid. Wonder where he gets it from." Sarah looked at her son, at the dog who'd changed everything, at the man who'd become their protector and partner. "He gets it from all of us. We taught each other how to be brave." Max's eyes opened, meeting hers in the dim cabin light. His tail thumped once against the seat. Agreement, contentment, and something that looked remarkably like gratitude. 10 years after that morning by the storm drain, they gathered again. A reunion of sorts. The warehouse had been converted into a community center. The place where evidence of corruption was found, transformed into a place of hope. Tommy, now 15, stood at a podium with Max beside him, older, grayer, moving carefully, but still dignified. They were there to dedicate the Officer Mark Hendricks Memorial K-9 training facility. 10 years ago, Tommy began, his voice now deep but still carrying that earnest quality. A dog cried for help from a sewer pipe. Most people walked by, but my mom stopped. She stopped because I asked her to, because something told me this dog needed us. What we didn't know was how much we needed him. He looked down at Max, whose clouded eyes still tracked his every movement. Max didn't just expose corruption or solve crimes. He taught us that connection doesn't require words, that loyalty doesn't require explanation, that love doesn't require perfection, just presence. The audience, cops, families, children with their therapy dogs, listened intently. This facility will train dogs like Max, but more importantly, it will train people to listen, to pay attention, to stop when someone needs help, even if it makes us late, even if it's inconvenient, even if it's dangerous. Tommy knelt beside Max, his hand on the old dog's head. Max is retiring today. His working days are done. But his legacy, Tommy's voice caught slightly. His legacy will live on in every dog trained here, every life saved, every truth uncovered. Max stood slowly, painfully, but with determination. He walked to the ribbon stretched across the facility's entrance and, with Tommy's help, pushed through it, officially opening the center. The crowd erupted in applause, but Tommy only had eyes for Max, who was looking at him with such clear love and pride that everyone could see it. That night, at home, Max struggled to climb onto his favorite spot on the couch. Daniel lifted him gently, and the dog settled with a contented sigh between Tommy and Sarah. The younger dogs curled up on the floor, maintaining the respectful distance they always gave the old warrior. "Mom," Tommy said quietly, "Max wants me to tell you something." Sarah stroked the gray head resting against her leg. "What's that, sweetheart?" "He says thank you for stopping that morning, for not giving up when things got dangerous, for letting him finish his job." Tommy's voice was thick with emotion. "And for giving him a family when he thought he'd lost everything." Sarah couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. Daniel reached over, his hand covering hers where it rested on. "Max is back." "Tell him," Sarah managed. "Tell him we're the ones who should be thankful. He saved us all." Max's tail wagged weakly, and he released a long, contented sigh. In that moment, Sarah remembered the frightened, injured dog in the pipe and marveled at the journey, from that desperate morning to this peaceful evening, surrounded by family born not from blood, but from choice, trust, and an unbreakable bond between a boy and his dog. 2 weeks later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Max didn't wake up. Tommy found him, still curled in his bed, looking peaceful in a way he never had during his vigilant life. The boy didn't cry at first, just sat beside his old friend, stroking the still fur, whispering words only they could understand. Sarah and Daniel found them there an hour later, Tommy finally crying, great gasping sobs that shook his teenage frame. They held him as he grieved, the younger dogs pressing close, understanding in their animal way that their leader was gone. The funeral was bigger than anyone expected. Police officers from 5 states, families Max had helped, children who'd learned bravery from his story. The mayor spoke, Chief Rivera spoke, but it was Tommy's eulogy that everyone remembered. "Max wasn't just a dog," he said, standing straight despite his tears. "He was a teacher, a protector, a bridge between worlds. He showed us that communication isn't about words, it's about understanding. That courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about doing what's right despite the fear." He looked at the flag-draped casket, regulation for a police dog who died in service to his community. Max chose us that morning in the rain. Not randomly, not by accident. He chose us because he knew, somehow he knew, that we would help him finish his mission, that we would become the family he needed to heal, that we would carry on his work. Tommy pulled out a worn collar, Max's first one, the one he'd worn in the pipe. This collar saved him that day. It helped us find out who he was, but Max was always more than his name, more than his training. He was proof that love transcends species, that loyalty transcends death, that purpose transcends pain. He placed the collar on the casket. "Goodbye, Max. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for trusting us. Thank you for showing me who I was meant to be." As they lowered the casket, a remarkable thing happened. Dogs throughout the crowd, Service dogs, therapy dogs, police dogs, all began to howl, a mournful, beautiful sound that rose into the sky like a prayer, a farewell to one of their own. Tommy stood tall, tears streaming down his face, as the howling continued. Sarah and Daniel stood beside him, hands on his shoulders, as their own dogs added their voices to the chorus. When it finally ended, the silence was profound. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, someone started clapping, slowly, then faster, until the entire gathering was applauding, not just for Max, but for what he represented. The unbreakable bond between humans and animals, the power of trust, the importance of stopping when someone cries for help. 5 years later, Dr. Tommy Mitchell graduated from veterinary school, specializing in canine behavioral therapy. The Max Foundation, which he had started in high school, had trained over 1,000 therapy dogs for veterans, abuse survivors, and children with disabilities. At his graduation, Sarah and Daniel sat in the front row, pride radiating from every pore. Beside them sat a young German shepherd, Max's biological grandson, located after years of searching. His name was Hope, and he had the same intelligent amber eyes, the same intuitive understanding that had marked Max as special. In his valedictorian speech, Tommy said, 20 years ago, a dog cried from a sewer pipe. A mother stopped because her child asked her to. That moment changed everything, not just for us, but for thousands of people helped by the dogs we've trained, the programs we've started, the connections we've fostered. He looked at Hope, who watched him with that familiar intensity. Max taught us that every cry for help matters, that every act of kindness creates ripples, that sometimes the most important moments in our lives come disguised as interruptions, as inconveniences, as scared animals needing rescue. Tommy's eyes found his parents in the crowd. So I challenge you all, listen for the cries, stop when others walk by, be the person who says yes when everything in you wants to say no, because you never know when you might be saving not just a life, but hundreds of lives. You never know when the scared, wounded soul you help might be the one who saves you right back. As he left the stage, Hope beside him, the auditorium erupted. But Tommy only had eyes for his parents, the people who'd shown him what courage looked like on a foggy Thursday morning, when they could have walked away, but didn't. Today, the Max Memorial stands in that park in Maplewood, a bronze statue of a German shepherd looking alert but peaceful, with a small boy's hand resting on his head. The plaque reads, Max, 2015 to 2025, hero, teacher, friend. He reminded us that the greatest courage is found in compassion. The strongest bonds are forged in crisis, and the most important voices are often those without words. His legacy lives on in every act of kindness, every moment of bravery, every choice to help rather than walk away. Visitors often leave dog toys at the statue's base. Children read his story in schools across the country. Veterans credit him with inspiring the therapy dog programs that saved their lives. But for Sarah, Daniel, and Tommy, Max's greatest legacy was simpler. He taught them how to be a family. He showed them that love doesn't always come in expected packages. And he proved that sometimes, when you save someone, you're really saving yourself. On quiet evenings when Hope curls up in the same spot Max once claimed, when Tommy works late at his clinic helping injured K-9 officers, when Sarah and Daniel watch the sunset from their porch surrounded by the rescue dogs they continue to foster, they remember that morning by the storm drain. They remember the crying that almost went unheard. They remember the choice to stop when everyone else kept walking. They remember the wounded warrior who became their salvation. And they smile, knowing that somewhere, somehow, Max is still watching, still protecting, still teaching others the lesson he taught them. That every soul deserves someone who will stop, who will listen, who will say, "You're safe now. You're loved. You're home." The ripples continue to spread. Every dog trained at the Hendricks facility, every child who learns Tommy's story, every person who stops to help instead of walking by. They all carry a piece of Max's spirit forward, because that's what heroes do. They inspire others to be heroes too. And sometimes, just sometimes, those heroes come on 4 legs, with amber eyes and wounded hearts, crying from broken places, waiting for someone brave enough to answer their call. In the end, Max didn't just expose corruption or solve crimes or save lives, though he did all those things. He reminded humanity of its capacity for connection across species, for love without conditions, for courage in the face of danger. He proved that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness, stopping for a crying dog on a busy morning, can change the world. And in a small town called Maplewood, in a park where children play and dogs run free, a bronze statue stands eternal watch, reminding everyone who passes, listen for the cries, stop when others won't, love without reservation, protect without question, and never ever walk away from someone who needs you, because you might just be their only hope, and they might just be yours. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if this story touched your heart. Comment below and tell us about a time when an animal changed your life, or when a moment of kindness led to something amazing. Remember, every share helps spread Max's message of hope, courage, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Hit that notification bell to hear more incredible true stories of heroism, loyalty, and love. Together, we can honor all the Maxes out there, the four-legged heroes who remind us what unconditional love really means.